Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name is Luke Payson. Welcome back to all those who are already subscribers to the channel. If you're not, please subscribe so that you can see more great interviews, including our next guest, Cowboy Eddy Padilla. Cowboy Eddy,
Man,
welcome back to the show, sir.
thanks for having me. It's one of my favorite shows, man. I get excited every time I come on here.
I'm excited every time you come on. Glad you are as well. The crowd gets excited every time you come out. Let's jump in on that. You're known Pittsburgh MMA. You just improved to 3-0. We'll get to the fight in a second, but let's talk about the crowd and the fact that they were all wearing matching shirts. You're wearing the hoodie now, and it was very impressive to me to see your crowd super excited and all rocking these Cowboy Eddy shirts with a really fantastic design on the back of your face. Let's get a picture of that. I know you've got one of them there.
Yeah, we this is actually it right here. It was a picture from the first fight. My friend Shelly, she threw that together and she ended up making the hoodies, and she's an animal, man. We got this one I'm wearing not right now, is champion, but we got a Nike one. We got all kinds of stuff. She killed it with that.
Yeah. How much does it encourage you and how much does it mean for you to really have that crowd support? If somebody hasn't been there in person, they really need to go to a Cowboy Eddy fight and join the Cowboy Army, if we can call it that, because you are super popular. The crowd they get in the aisle. Sometimes they have to be told to back up, but they get super excited to support you and cheer you on. It really raises the stakes of the fight. So talk about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing behind the shirts is like we didn't even do really any profit on the shirts. I just wanted people wearing them, you know what I mean? It means a lot to me. Especially when I go out there, even after the fight, come out there and just see everybody wearing kind of like your football number, you know what I mean? Everyone got your jersey on, and for me that means a lot because you know what I mean. It's I love seeing my friends supporting me, my family, and I love that it's something that they can all wear and be like kind of a unit with me, you know what I mean? But I have one of the best followings, I would say, and it means the world to me that those guys come out there and support me every time.
Yeah, and it really does go to show for people that are new to or just getting used to regional MMA. It really makes a difference because by the time a fighter is up at the UFC level, which might be your future, that would be awesome. The events are so big, it's really hard at that point for fans to get close to the fighters and get to support them. And obviously at this point, you know everybody, and if you don't know everybody that's in the crowd wearing your shirt, you can get to know them. So it's really approachable at these events. I highly encourage you to check out a 247 fight in the future, particularly if Cowboy Eddy's on it. Introduce yourself, all of that. You also mentioned your football. You've been on the show a bunch of times. We know that you're a former collegiate football player, and it makes a lot of sense, right? I've gone to Steelers games, and you can see the jerseys and who's supporting who, and it's kind of like that at a fight for sure. Let's get into the fight. You've become a 247 staple. All your fights have been within 247, and you took on a fighter, even though he's not a hometown fighter, he's from Michigan. He's been in 247 for all of his fights as well, has a good number of amateur fights. You guys both are kind of seasoned amateurs. What was it like taking on Timbo Slice? I know that was you were matched up with somebody else. He was matched up with somebody else. Hats off to both of you for fighting each other, even though you originally matched to other people. So how did that come together? And what was it like saying yes to that, even though you originally scheduled with somebody else?
Um, so the one thing I will say I have learned since being in the whole fight game and stuff like that, and I talked about it one time on your show, like I don't really plan for anybody because even this fight, I had like three people scheduled to fight me, and then they all fell out. And then a week before Timbo, I'm fighting Timbo, So the one thing I will say is hats off to him. Ryan and Hunter said it like he didn't have to take the fight on amateur rule set. Speaking of, he just followed me back on Instagram. um, he didn't have to take the fight on the amateur rule set, and so big shout out to him. But I mean, I knew he was going to be game. I knew he was going to be tough. Um, I saw a lot of flaws in his wrestling, so I knew the wrestling was always going to be there. Should my game plan not go according to plan, but like I said, I knew he was going to be tough. The first round he ate a couple shots, second round he ate a couple shots, and either he had a good poker face or his chin's that tough, you know. So hats off to him. Though he's a tough kid. It was a fun fight, you know. I mean, I got to talk to him in the back too, and he's an awesome dude. I told him, me personally, I love a villain. You know what I mean? Like, I got the Joker tatted on me. Like, I love his story. Out of town dude coming into another town and just taking over. Like, I love that. You know what I mean? So I told him that in the back.
Yeah, and I think it's great to see you guys. You put on a great show. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but the interplay between the two of you was super great. You guys will be seeing each other, probably not in the cage, but you'll be seeing each other at 247 events. You come to a bunch, he comes to a bunch. So it's really great that you guys took the challenge of each other. He posted on Facebook, so it's out there how proud he is of his chin, like you mentioned, that he's confident in his stand-up. And he said that as his post-fight in on Facebook that wrestling's still new to him, and kind of that's the MMA game, right? He's learning wrestling, you're learning MMA, you have an advantage, and that's what MMA is, figuring out a way to get an advantage over your opponent. You mentioned the rule set. I'm kind of happy that we never have to talk about the novice amateur rule set. It is important for people to realize that it does help fighters develop. I'm not one of these guys that thinks, oh, you should go fight pro rules right out of the gate as an amateur. It doesn't make sense. People get hurt that way. It's good to uh, develop things like cardio. I know before this fight, you came on here and talked about training 5-minute rounds. Obviously, you had no problem with cardio. Your next fight will be a 9-minute fight, which is quite a bit longer than a 6-minute fight. And that's exciting. It gives you more room to work. I know you're still looking, you wish this was a finish, but let's go round by round. I personally think a great fight that goes to a decision should not be a bad thing. A lot of times fighters apologize when they don't get a finish. A decision is still a good win, but let's go round by round. You mentioned the first round, cracking him a couple times on his feet, and kind of him not showing that. What did you feel like in there in the first round? Obviously the crowd's behind you, people are going nuts. He's a tough opponent. He's not somebody you're going to get, that's just going to give in. So what was it like first round, and then that in between where you're game planning for the second round on that break? What were your mindset coming out of the first round?
It's always like every fight. It's always I don't know the right word, but like that first time, it's kind of like the first time you see someone, the first time you feel someone. We got into the clinch, and like you feel what it feels like when they grab you, where their power's at. So when we got into the first clinch, I mean, I felt his power. I knew he wasn't going to be someone who rolled over, and he like I said, post fight to you, he was a lot stronger than I thought he was going to be. You know what I mean? Not that I was downplaying his strength or anything like that, but I didn't expect him to be that strong. I still was able to get a takedown. I had a good trip in the first round, and it sucks. A couple seconds after the trip, I was able to get in the mount, and there was like nothing I could really do. And Common and I talk about it all the time. It's like in novice amateur, there's like no point of going to mount. I did it just off of instinct, and then I was like, when I got in mount, I was like, what am I gonna do now? And I heard the 10-second going off, so I was like, I'm already here. I was gonna dismount, and then I ended up not. But then in between rounds, getting ready for the second, like you can see it if you watch the stream back. Kama was like, "You don't need the stool, do you?" I was like, "No, I'm cool." Like I was just standing there talking to him. So my cardio felt good. Yeah, I yeah. I mean, I don't know. I felt confident.
Well, on that first round with that, you got into mount. There was a couple of things there that you pointed out. One is the round was coming to an end because it's a 2-minute round. Next time it'll be a 3-minute round. So obviously getting into mount with a minute to go with ground and pound would have made a huge difference. And you mentioned on the mic with me that, with advanced amateur rules, the fight might have ended. We don't know because Timbo slices a dog. He might have been able to, but it's a different world when you're mounted and getting punched and your head's hitting off the canvas. And so obviously I think that just sets up your advanced amateur next time out to even be higher stakes. That we've seen a lot of talent out of you, but it's literally just scratching the surface, because getting into a position like full mount in an advanced amateur fight with a minute and 10 seconds and ground and pound it's a much more dangerous situation, you know.
Mm.
So that is absolutely what stood out to me. Both the round time would be longer and also the rule set. But I would still say, you know, if you had more time, you could have dismounted, gotten into a better position because of the rule set. But it is good to get into a flow state and advance to full mount because in the future, advanced amateur and pro, that's the position you want to be in. So it does kind of make sense to go through that. Obviously, in between rounds, you felt good. What was it like in the second round? And any highlights or things that stand out to you there?
Um, yeah, in the second, I was able to get another takedown, and then even there, I wanted to showcase some jujitsu. I had a finish in a tournament that Kirk taught me. The story he told you about me finishing a submission in between rounds that he taught me before was I wasn't able to get my left arm across Timba's face for the Kimura,
Mm,
but I was able to get it behind his head. So if you watch it, I was able to pin his left hand behind his head, and I was going to set the Kimura up, and he ended up rolling into it. And I think should I have been able to strike, I probably would have been able to hit him a couple of times, and maybe he would have loosened up and given the Kimura up. You know what I mean? So that's another thing I'm looking forward to. Not just the ground and pound, but the ground and pound setting up
mm.
submissions. You know what I mean? That someone who knows you can't hit him in the face is just holding their arm. You know what I mean? They're not expecting to get hit in the face. And then I tried to transition from that into an arm triangle, but I ended up slipping back into his guard. But all in all, like you said, I was more disappointed in myself because I had high expectations for the fight and I wanted to finish and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, like you said, it was an exciting fight, and the most important thing is that, I mean, we gotta win. There's at the end of the day, that's what it's about. So
Of course. And that's great insight. Like ground and pound will be great for you, but MMA is mixed martial arts. I was having a really random conversation with somebody behind the stage of a guy that was popular like 10 years ago, Big Country, Roy Nelson. And one of the things, he was so good on the ground, but liked striking that he never really took advantage of the heavyweight division on the ground. And possibly things would have gone differently if he had used some of his jujitsu. So even though you're getting potentially really good positions for ground and pound. I think it's an intelligent fighter that wants to use your strikes to get finishes, or like you said, use your strikes to set up submission finishes. So I personally think that goes a long way for your game plan because you're going to, as you advance to the ranks, need more and more layers to your game. Of course, you train out of the academy with Kama, and he's been at the top of the mountain. And clearly, there's a lot of things that you can layer on. But using strikes to set up submission or submissions to set up strikes, that goes incredibly well together. That's a more high level approach. And obviously, anytime you can trap a hand of your opponent on the ground, that does open up ground and pound or like a submission back and forth. And Coach Kurt, as you said, he's told me pretty much every time he sees me, because I think it's the excitement he has of you, that you're a sponge. And that makes a big difference. Not only your athleticness, because you've known this probably your whole life that you're super athletic. Things come very naturally to you. Obviously, as a football player, I believe you were a running back, right?
free
So,
safety.
oh, safety.
Hmm.
Okay, that's even. I was gonna actually safety even makes more sense because I was gonna say running backs a lot of athleticism. I think on the defense, pretty much everybody in the secondary is in some ways more athletic than the wide receivers. No offense to wide receivers, but they get the advantage of being able to run their routes, and the safety and the corners and even the middle linebackers have to react. So there's much more of a dynamic movement when you're on defense. And I actually think defensive football players converting to MMA, it's a little bit more natural. Whereas somebody who's used to a playbook where they've got to run a four yard post or whatever, offensively minded, where it's all a game plan, can sometimes struggle a little bit more in MMA because it is so fluid and you've got to make stuff up as you go. But anyhow, one of the things that your coaches always bring up is that your raw natural athleticism is great, but your ability to pick things up. How long back do you remember as a kid? How long ago do you remember in sports being able to pick up the intelligent side of things and not just the athleticism?
Um, Probably as far back as I can remember. I've always been super big on just visual learning. You know what I mean? And especially like when you're playing a game like football or something like that, you know, a team will keep running the route on you if you can't stop it. You know what I mean? So once something happens to you one time, you got to make the adjustment right then and there. You know what I mean? Otherwise, they're just gonna keep doing it. And I think the good thing about me is I understood that at a really young age, so I was actually able to, like, you know, when I watch film, anticipate. Oh, you know, he does A, B, C, and D before he runs this route. So you're kind
Mm.
of able to anticipate that. You know what I mean? So, um, but yeah, I mean, as far back as I can remember, just being coachable was probably my favorite thing about myself, you know, outside of my athleticism. I just love how coachable I am, you know,
Yeah.
and especially when it comes to jujitsu was my first love when I got
Yeah.
into MMA. And
Tournaments. You were doing tournaments a bunch. Yeah.
I was doing a tournament almost every other week.
Yeah.
So, and it was one of those things that, like, in something like that, there's 100 ways to do one move.
Mm.
So just being a sponge and trying to learn them all is like just as good as they can get. You know what I mean? You can't get the traditional Kimura. You do the arm behind. You know what I mean? If that doesn't work, then like I said, I tried to adjust and go to the arm triangle. Like being able to piece together those things and being coachable to a point where Dave Sachs was big on this. You know, if you go for triangle, you don't get it. Go for the arm bar. You don't get arm bar, they go behind. Go omoplata. You don't get omoplata. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
just being able to piece everything together. And I think one thing, especially that Calm is big with me with, and he understands, like, as my coach and me as a student, he's able to put those things together. And he'll tell you himself, he's not a huge wrestler, but even when he's coaching with me or we're doing whatever together, he'll say, hey, look, you do this in the striking world, but then for you, if you do ABC, shoot off of this. You know what I mean? I won't shoot, but if I were you, this is
Right.
a spot you could shoot, you know?
Right.
So
He's customized, and that's what any great coach will do. And of course, Kama's up there. He will coach from his experience when it's applicable to you, when you need to know what he knows. But that's actually a next level coaching where he says your skill set means you shoot off this. He won because he was more of a striker, but your skill set has different wrinkles, and that's what's really cool about MMA. Every gyms oftentimes develop, game plans which are great and they can work, but every fighter's unique, even within the same gym. So really awesome stuff. Let's get to the third round. How confident were you that you were up 2 rounds coming into it? Do you ever pay attention to the scorecard coming into the third round, or is it just win every round that's in front of you?
it's really just win every round. Especially in a fight. You know, all it took was him to clip me one time and the fight be over. So I never really. I mean, you got to be self aware. You know, if you're down 2-0, you got to know, like, it's time to just push on the gas pedal. You know what I mean? If you get throttled in the process, you're already down 2-0.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I knew I was up 2-0. And I knew we were talking about Commissar in the corner. He wasn't doing a very good job of using his distance on me. He had a longer reach than me, and he was really crowding his punches. So Kama was like, "Look, worst case scenario, stand and bang with him. But if he crowds you, just take him down. You know what I mean? It's the third round. It's so I I was really prepared for him to rush, and he did, and we got the takedown, and that was pretty much all it was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great coaching from your corner to kind of see the pattern. That's what's great about being in the corner is by the end of the second round, going into the third, the game plan's kind of developing, and he was able to see that. And I'm sure Timbo, because Timbo's a fan of all things 247. Obviously, you guys are friendly. It's no hard feeling or anything. I'm sure he's watching this. So shout out Timbo for all that you do, and hopefully that note from Kama, if you can fight longer next time, it'll make you even harder on your feet. And I know that you pride yourself in your striking in all of your MMA. And I don't know if you saw the Cincinnati fight where Timbo got what very well could be the submission of the year. Did you watch that? How I know you're a jiu-jitsu guy. You said jiu-jitsu is your first love in MMA because it's what got you into it. But how aware were you of that really unique inverted triangle, leg triangle? A lot of people have seen the reverse, but this was the inverted. He put it up over the back as opposed to just mounting. How much were you aware that on the ground he's kind of creative in his submission attacks?
If you watch that fight in depth too, which we did when we were getting ready for this, super active guard, you know what I mean? Especially in a fight like that where you were able to ground and pound. They were in Cincinnati, you know. But super active guard. He was throwing his legs up. He was going for triangles. He was, you know what I mean? He ended up getting one.
Mhm.
Um, I knew even if I did take him down, he was longer than me. You know what I mean? He was gonna be throwing up triangles. He was gonna be trying to throw up arm bars. So that's why I tried to finish all my takedowns going into side instead of going straight into his guard.
Mhm.
And I tried to avoid as much as I
Yeah.
could, especially in the second and third. He almost had me in his guard, just doing everything I could to not be in it because my frame's a lot shorter than his. A triangle or something like that would have been easy for him to throw up. So I knew I wanted to stay out of his guard, but I knew he had that in his
Mhm.
tool set. You know.
And a little wrinkle there for people that are trying to figure out your own MMA. Getting a takedown for a takedown's sake and falling into somebody's guard is not great in MMA. And you still see this in MMA where it's great to get a takedown, but if your takedown puts you in a dangerous position, like to your point, get a takedown, but be thinking 2, 3 moves ahead so that as you finish your takedown, you pass a leg, you get to either half or side control. So that way you're in a better position. Same thing if your neck gets taken, getting down instead of landing in full guard and getting guillotined. If you get to the side, Justin the General Patton, who was the main event a couple years back, he got a Von Proof finish because the guy held on to the guillotine. He cleared it to side control, was able to sneak the arm under and get a finish. So, and that's all because had he just gone forward and let the guard, that fight probably ends. Instead, he ends it because he thought ahead and cleared the hip. So that's a really good detail. That's awesome. Let's get to, I think it's exciting. You gave an actual call out of a very exciting 155er who was supposed to be on that card, and things happened and things changed. But you called out Hoot Lee. Super exciting. You're 3-0. He's 3-0. All of your fights have been in 247, both of you. And you both have very big, you both come from different gyms, of course, but you both have very big followings. Let's get to that. Why'd you call him out? How much are you looking forward to this matchup being made if it can come together?
Um, I'm really excited about the matchup being made. I think our styles really complement each other. I think, he's obviously a good wrestler. I would consider myself a good wrestler, and I think that this is a matchup that, uh, just one that I really wanted, one that I looked forward to. You know what I mean? And it was kind of getting underneath my skin that they kept calling this a title eliminator between Hoot and
Mhm.
Timbo, and I don't know. I felt left out the conversation, and I feel like they were calling that a title eliminator, and I beat Timbo, so now I feel like it's only right that I beat him, and we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to convince me. I mean, I'm on board. I'm also a big fan of Hoot. He's been on the show a bunch, and I think that's the point, particularly in amateurs, is fight the best guys so that your career goes up. And if you fight a guy, you or anybody, like Timbo just did, he fought you. He knew he'd be a tough guy. You knew he'd be tough. If you take a loss, then at the amateur level, it's learning, it's getting it figured out, and that's a big thing, trying to keep perfect amateur records, which some fighters do. And hey, you get to make your own decisions in life, but sometimes that can backfire. So it's really good to take super challenge excuse me super challenging fights. I personally think it makes sense that you felt left out when they were calling it a title eliminator. It's also a deep 155 division, and that's a bit rare sometimes, right? To have a division in amateur where you've got multiple guys that could all make a claim for being in the title running. The way it worked out, you've obviously taken out Timbo. That was the risk he took. He was a team player to keep you guys on the card. So hats off to him. But it makes sense now that that's part of the fight game, right? You take a little bit, you go over when you win. So makes sense to me. I'm pretty sure that's what, I'm not the matchmaker, handsome Jim Mooney is, but I'm pretty sure that that's the game plan, and hopefully that works out. That'll be an awesome fight for sure. And of course, other things can happen. You mentioned, I guess we can end on this, or at least it's a good question to ask you. You mentioned at the top of the show that you can't really train for just one opponent because you went through like three, ended up on Timbo with a week's notice, and same for him, of course. How important do you think it is with your training and Kama and everybody at the academy to just continue to build skills so that you can go, on a week's notice or 2 weeks' notice to a different opponent and you don't feel like scrambled mentally?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think in my personal opinion, that's the whole point of the fight game to me, not being the best guy that can beat southpaws or not being the best guy that can beat wrestlers. I want to be the best fighter I can be, and I want to beat anybody that happens to be in front of me. So who leads a southpaw? I'm not just going against Craig Perry every single day until the fight. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna keep training against everybody. I'm gonna continue to um just improving my game and being the best well-rounded fighter I can be. And then, whoever they happen to match me up with, and it's a fight. So who knows? So for me, the biggest thing is just continue to be the best version I can be, and whoever I get in there with is whoever I get in there with.
Sure. You mentioned Craig Perry, and I just did an interview with James Stevenson for people that know and love JT. Check that out. But he mentioned, and I was unaware of this, that Craig Perry is super helpful in like the weight cutting or nutrition planning. What was that like for you? Obviously, he's a teammate of yours at the academy. He's a great guy, has a wonderful story of perseverance as a young kid in MMA, getting some really bad breaks, pardon the pun, coming into MMA, really could have given up, has turned into a better fighter for it, and he's a motivational guy. But what was that like? How did you feel? JT spent a lot of time talking about getting the nutrition, the weight cut figured out, and he had an incredible performance compared to his first two, and really got things figured out. So, how has Craig been helpful? Is this something Craig does for everybody, or is this just more because you guys are in the gym? Because I don't know a ton about Craig's nutrition background.
Yeah, well, not a knock on him or anything, but I didn't know he was that knowledgeable either. We were at the gym one day and we were talking about my diet and how I was changing things up to get ready to start cutting weight. And he was like, "Whoa, I wouldn't do that. I would do this." And he started getting into a whole bunch of specific details. And I was like, how do you know that? And then we ended up getting on the phone one night and we talked for like, I took a screenshot. We talked for like 2 hours about what I was going to eat, when I was going to eat it, how much water I was going to drink, when I was going to drink it. He was just on top of everything. And he had all the scientific, everything to back up what he was talking about. And then, the day before he came here and he helped me cut weight. We cut weight together. He was with me all the way up until I drove to weigh-ins. And I actually did what he wanted me to do to cut weight, and that was, I mean, I made weight, and so I'm gonna plug him. I mean, if you need help with your diet or you need help cut weight, I mean, call Craig. We're gonna get him set up. We're gonna
There you
we're gonna
go.
get him to start making some money on that. But yeah, man, he's super knowledgeable, and Craig's one of those guys. He's a real positive guy. You know what I mean? Everything, the weight cut was going super good, and every day he would wake up and text me, what's your weight at? You're doing great. Today let's try to be here, and then I'd make it, and he'd be like, you're doing a great job. Keep your head on straight. Blah blah. Like it was just an all around like a great show of like what a great teammate he is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And that's the behind literally that's the behind the scenes stuff that can make or break a fighter. A good gym with not only great coaches, obviously Colin Death Star worthy, first ever 247 pro champ, first ever 247 champ to go to the UFC. I mean, he's incredible. But a gym is a gym for a reason. It's not just one coach. It's the other coaches, it's the other teammates, it's helping people out. And hats off to Craig. I love having him on the show. I'm sure he's going to want to be fighting again soon. But it goes a long way. And maybe not everybody has Craig's ability to help people cut weight. But if you have the ability to encourage somebody or help them in some other way, that can go a long way. But hats off to Craig. I think for you, you've always kind of managed your weight cut. I know you've made weight before. JT was saying that he felt kind of drained and depleted, and that led to some of the sort of disappointing outcomes in his first two fights. Because you guys are both, I was thinking, even though you're different weight classes, both you and JT are big dudes for your weight class, and I think that can be an advantage. But it's only an advantage if you feel good in there. So
Mm.
it goes a long way. So awesome stuff. It's also something for people that think like, what do you do in amateur? That's another thing you do in amateur, right? You figure out your weight cut, you figure out your mindset, blocking things out, getting dialed in. There's a lot to figure out in amateur before you go pro. Love the call out of Hoot Lee. Can't wait if that fight gets matched up. Hoot Lee and you guys, both back on here to talk about that because that'll be an insane fight. But like you said, you'll fight who you get matched. Things happen. If the Hoot Lee fight doesn't happen right now, it can happen down the road in advanced amateur, maybe for a title. Or, we've talked about this before. Pittsburgh is coming along with so much talent. There's a chance you might fight somebody in amateur in the local, regional scene of 247 and then fight them again at pro. And we've seen that happen before at the biggest levels, where a lot of times when fighters come up together, they might end up fighting each other a couple different times depending on what's going on. As always, it's just incredible having you come on the show. We've talked about the fans. You gave them a Christmas gift, the week of Christmas. It's exactly a week from Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everybody. It's just incredible. 247 ended the year thanks to you and everybody on that card, including the grappling side, which is super cool. Ended on the absolute top for 247 to end on a great note and look towards 2024. Speaking of grappling and your love for jiu-jitsu, I can't do a wrap up to save my life. Speaking of jiu-jitsu, what was it like for you? Did you peek out? Do you like watching the super fights in the cage where it's just submission grappling? Is that something that kind of mentally, I know you're an MMA fighter, but is that mentally something you kind of like checking on?
Oh, 100%. Like, you just said, you're an MMA fighter. I'm still going to do tournaments. I'm going to do as many tournaments as I can coming up in 2024. I'm going to do anytime there's a tournament, even when I'm in camp. There was one I ended up missing because Calm and I were doing some sort of training, but there was a tournament a couple weeks ago I wanted to do in preparation for this fight. Like I love the idea of it. I love the sprawl on the burgh the night before. Went to both sprawl on the burghs. I love it. You know what I mean? And especially bringing that real serious competition side to jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Come out in a cage and compete against people. I love it, me personally, and I'll be at every sprawl on the burgh that I can make. I'll be at, I watched all the grappling matches before the fight. Yeah, I loved it.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to also support the grappling side of 247. It's great all around. Thanks so much, Cowboy Eddy, for coming back on the show. Best Christmas wishes to you and to your family. Happy New Year. See you in 2024.
Thank you as well.
You got it.